Check everything is right here. Everything is on. Okay, Bismillah, read. Hadith number. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وعن جابر قال نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يجسس القبور ويكتب عليها وأن توطأ رواه الترمذي. Narrated on the authority of Jabir radiallahu ta'ala, who said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited jassasa. You know, if you look at the meaning of the jassasa, you jassisu, it refers to lime type of a thing. But in this context, it means that you shouldn't make the grave solid, like you shouldn't build around it a wall. And so some people go to the extent to help him, they even put a slab on top of it and that type of thing, right? So you should keep the grave as plain as possible and as natural as possible. Yes, you know, sometimes alhamdulillah, we are fortunate here in South Africa, we don't have any type of restrictions, but sometimes maybe in Europe, in those places, they have some type of restrictions. Like there in Europe, you have to bury in a coffin. I know when we went in Jamaat to the UK, there in the masjid, there was a whole lot of coffins there, right? So I think the law there is that when you bury somebody, you have to put them in a coffin. But that is not the sunnah. That is not the sunnah method, right? So I don't know if there's restrictions maybe in the other countries, but when there's restrictions, then obviously Shariat recognizes that and Shariat allows for that. But if you've got freedom of religion, then you should keep the qabr. It shouldn't be. So in this context here, you can say it must be made solid or it must be made like a built around it or something like it, right? وَأَيُكْتَبَ عَلَيْهَا, and it must be written upon it. Okay, we'll do the explanation of this. وَأَن تُوطَعَ, and also that it must be trampled. So I told you, ayu jassasa here refer to like to use cement to make it solid. And the reason also, one of the reasons and the rationale of this is that the qabr is a place of ibrat. When you go to the qabristan, you must see how simple it is. And you must see that, you know, when you leave this dunya, you're taking nothing of this rich, poor, everybody will be the same, right? It is only your a'mal that you are taking with you, the hadith you studied, Mishkaat lessons you sat in, the Bukhari lessons you sat in, the Rood Shareef you read, etc. All of that will go with you. But nothing, there will be no sign of your personal wealth. There will be no sign of your personal opulence. That is one of the reasoning and the rationale. No distinction between rich, no distinction between poor. So the grave is a place of ibrat. It's a place, it's darul bala. And here they're saying also interesting that whether we understand the reasoning or not, it doesn't really matter. The main thing is that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam prohibited. Nabi Sallallahu said that the grave should be kept as simple as possible, right? Yes, sometimes maybe I told you, maybe some type of regulations in some countries, or maybe some places where the grave will collapse. You know, the ground is very swampy, and the grave collapses. Then to do something to prevent the grave from collapsing or something, that's a different story. That is based upon zarurat. Like here, you know, this grave here by Park and Scale, they actually stopped burying at one stage because that the water table was very high. You know, you just dig a little and you find water in there. So like when you got extenuating circumstances, that's a different story, right? Then ayaktuba alayha, our ulama, you see the Salafis, they generally take this in the literal sense. They say you can't even write the name of a person. You can't even write the name. The Salafis, you can't even write the name of a person. So they take that in a literal sense. But our ulama, they give permission to write the name, at least of a person, etc. They say this refers to like writing poems or writing ahadith or writing long. In Arabic, they call it marthiyah. What do you call it in English? Obituary. What do you call it when some? What do you call it? Obit, obituary. What? Obituary. They are writing a long obituary. Like, in Arabic called the marthiyah. Like, in praise of the deceased, that he was such a good person and this and this and this. But just to write the name, to write poems, that we say, this is how our ulama interpreted this here. And then it's also this pointers of writing Quranic verses and writing hadith, etc. Because it will be desecrated. Uh, in previous time, maybe the graves wasn't closed, it wasn't encompassed. Dogs will come, you urinate there, etc., etc. Yeah, they're saying that the Shara that some ulama have said if not on the grave, but like a little distance away from the grave, you write something. I can't hear what you're saying. Then it's fine. Then it's allowed. But they say don't open this door. So the author is saying don't open this door. Once you open this door, then people are gonna go to town and you can see what they're doing, right? Yeah, in India, some places here, or to Pakistan, they say they build canopies over the graves. They even put fans. They even put fans. He said, yeah, they even put air conditioners. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. But we know all that won't help you. There's only one thing that will help you in the grave. What is that? Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. It's your a'mal that is going to help you, right? So instead of spending that extra money on all this stuff, loud tombstones is also, yeah, just a stumble board. Take that same money and give it to charity on behalf of the deceased, or if the deceased got some missing salat, whatever, you pay the fidya. You can pay the fidya even without that person's permission. Even if the person never make wasiyat, we'll discuss this masala another time. If a person passes away and he makes wasiyat for his mas salat, then from his estate up to one third of his estate, you can use it to pay for his mas salat, right? Not more than one third. But you out of your own know that my father, my grandfather, my mother, etc., pass away, and you got X amount of salat that is never read. You pay the same fidya amount, 30 rand for one salat. In the Hanafi madhab, how many salat a day? Yusuf, how many salat a day in the Hanafi madhab? Loud? Six. Witr is also wajib, so you also have to pay fidya for witr, right? So 3 times 6 is $180. Now it's expensive, comes a lot of money. It's cheaper for you to read your salah. It's cheaper for 180 rand. So 1 week is how much? 7 times 180 is how much? About 1,300 rand. That's 1 month. I mean 1 week. And 1 month is how much? And then 1 year is how much? And then if you take 10 years, it can run into the hundreds of thousands of rands, right? So if you want to benefit your deceased, this is the job of the ulama now. This is the job of the ulama. That you have to educate the masses and tell them instead of spending on the tombstone or instead of buying expensive marble and doing all that funny things, take that money, put it into the stomach of a poor person, put it into a stomach of a hungry person, and make intention that, Ya Allah, this reward must go to the deceased. That will benefit the deceased more, right? Tut'am of kabidin ja'iin, right? Okay, let's look at the so graves. That's the work of the ulama to explain the awamun nas. Keep the graves as simple as possible. Just a simple board there, and then maybe a few stones, rocks around it, right? And then yes, you are the benefit the deceased. You and also you can keep it neat, you can keep it clean, etc. But not go overboard and make it over smart and plants and flowers and all that type of thing. And I gave you the reasoning. The reason is what? That the grave is a place of ibrat. right, is a place of lesson. Read the next riwayat.
الله قال وشق النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان الذي رش الماء على قبره بلال بن رباح برقة وهدأ من قبل نفسه انتهى إلى رجليه رواه البيهقي.
وأنه قال رش قبر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وكان الذي رش الماء على قبره بلال بن رباح بقربة بدأ من قبل رأسه حتى انتهى إلى رجليه رواه البيهقي في دلائل النبوة. Also narrated in the authority of Jabir radiallahu ta'ala said, Rusha qabr Nabi Sallam. The qabr of our beloved Nabi Sallam was sprinkled with water. And he said, the one who sprinkled, وَكَانَ الَّذِي رَشَّ الْمَاءَ عَلَى قَبْرِ بِلَالُ ibn. As Bilal radiallahu ta'ala, who he sprinkled the water, بِقِرْبَةٍ, like with a lota, or in those days you have like a leather bag, and he started from the head and he ended by the feet. So we see the adab and the etiquette is you can put water on the qabr from the head side, from the feet side. And the purpose of this here is what? Is so that, especially like the desert sand, the desert sand is loose, the wind will blow it away, etc., etc. So to keep, to solidify and to keep the grave, the sand together, etc., right? But it's also mustahab. You can say, I don't think it's sunnah. You must check it out. Inshallah, I don't think it's sunnah, but you can take mustahab. It's from the etiquettes of grave burying. That's not a sunnah act, right? Read the next one.
بجنازته حين أمر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بحجر فلم يستطع أخذها فقام إليه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وحسر عن قال المطلب قال الذي يبدأ.
Stop there. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وعن المطلب. I got عن المطلب. Have you got the tajdeed on the lam also? You got the tajdeed on the ta. Your kitab, tajdeed al ta. What you got? I got you anil mutallabi. Let me see your way. Muttalib, it makes more sense. You got muttalibi. Okay. So I change it. Okay, let me change it. And that makes more sense also. Muttalabi. Right. وعلي المطلب ابن أبي وداعة. This is right. مطلب ابن وداعة narrates لما مات عثمان بن مسعود. When Uthman ibn Mas'ud passed away, أخرج بجنازته. His janaza was brought out, right, فدفن, and he was buried, right. أمر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رجلا. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam instructed one person أن يأتيه بحجر, that he must bring a rock. They said, bring this rock. فَلَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ حَمْلَهُ. But this person, they're not saying who the person is. He was unable to carry it, right? But فَقَامَ إِلَيْهَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam stood up to the rock, right? وَحَسَرَ عَنْ ذِرَائِهِ, and he folded up his forearms, right? So, as I قال المطلب, you said al-muttalib. قال المطلب. Right. So Muttalib is saying, see, listen nicely, just for this here. He's saying that the one who narrated this hadith to me, he's not saying himself. So he wasn't there. Are you with me, Yusuf? Are you following? So he's saying, قال المطلب المطلب مطلب. He's saying, قال الذي يخبرني, the one who's informing me. So you see, he wasn't there. Muttalib ibn Abu Wada wasn't there. Somebody else narrated the hadith. He heard it from somebody else. He never say who's telling him. But now he's saying that this person who was there, who saw it and told me about it, he's saying, you got it? You understood it, Luqman? So he's saying, يخبرني, he informs me, عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This person is telling me, he's saying, كأني, so it's who the Sahabi was present, he's saying, كأني أنظر إلى بياض ذراعي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This person, as he's narrating the hadith to Muttalib, he say, this person is saying, as though I can see the whiteness of the Mubarak forearms of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hina hasara anhuma, when he rolled up his sleeves. ثم حملها, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam he picked up the rock himself, فوضعها عند رأسه, and he placed it by the head of Hazrat Uthman. وقال أعلم بها, and he said أعلم, with this, يعني with this rock, Hazrat Uthman ibn Mas'ud will be recognized. أعلم بها قبر, I got here وأعلم بها قبر أخي. What you got? I think it must be supposed to be قبر أخي. What you got? You got any kind of qabr there? You also got qabr akhi. Qabr akhi. Okay, so then it's like a maf'ul. So he said, يعني قال أعلم, it will be recognized بها, with this rock, with this rock, qabr akhi, the qabr of my brother, right? وأدفن إليه, and it will be buried إليه. Little bit says towards it, but in this context, it will be buried here. Mamata, and this is Mamata min ahli file, whoever dies from my family, right? Rawahu Abu Dawud narrates the riwayat. So you know this, we done this before, we discussed this before. The first of the Muhajirin that passed away in Medina from Munawwara was who? Was Uthman ibn Mas'un. But anyway, the author gave some very interesting information here that is not so relevant to the three famous Uthmans that you know. One is Hazrat Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu ta'ala, that you know him. He was a double son-in-law of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the third Khalifa. Did you get the second Uthman, famous Uthman, was Uthman ibn Talha al-Hajabi. He was a kafir at the time of Sulh Hudaybiyah when Uthman got missing there. And he refused to give the keys of the Kaaba to Rasul. He's the one who refused at the Umrah al-Qadha. You know what is Umrah al-Qadha, right? You know what is Umrah al-Qadha? Remember, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam he was stopped from making Umrah. Then the next year they said you come back, and they made an agreement, etc. So in the Umrah al-Qadha, the same person, Uthman ibn Talha, this is interesting, first time I come across it, he refused to give the keys to Rasulullah, or he refused to give access of the Kaaba to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Are you with me? So the second time, right? Then, interesting, at the time of Fath Makkah, because the other Muslims were in control, they forcefully took the keys away from him. But interesting thing here, interesting thing, very interesting. Allah Ta'ala instructed the keys must be given back to this family, as Uthman ibn Talha's family. An interesting thing is this year, that till today, the keys is still in this family. There was some years ago, some story about on social media about one of these descendants that got the keys or something. So this is, obviously the government have to respect this, because this is the instruction of Allah Ta'ala via Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he became a Muslim. So that was the second famous Uthman ibn Talha, right? So three things about him. He was a kafir at the time of Sulh Hudaybiyah. At the time of Umrah al-Qadha, he refused to give the keys to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then at Fath Makkah, the keys were snatched away from him, but on the instruction of Allah Ta'ala, it was given back to him, right? Then the third one is Uthman ibn Mas'ud that we're discussing here. Interesting facts about him. He was the 13th person to accept Islam. He accepted Islam in Makkah already, before Hijrat. And then, as I told you, he was the first person to pass away in Medina. He was the first person to be buried in Jannatul Baqi. You went to Jannatul Baqi, ne? أنت زرت جنة البقيع؟ ما زرت حتى الآن. إن شاء الله ستذهب إن شاء الله. He was the foster brother of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And Nabi Sallallahu was very fond of him and he had a deep love for him. He was also a Badri Sahaba. He took part in the Battle of Badr. After he passed away, Nabi Sallallahu also kissed him on his forehead. So this year you learn also that when somebody, a loved one, passes away, to kiss them on their forehead is a sunnah of Rasulullah. In fact, it's also the sunnah of Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu kissed who? Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam after he passed away. It's mentioned that the tears were flowing from the cheeks of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So remember the natural tabi grief that you experience the loss of a loved one, that is not against patience, right? What is against patience is to question the decree of Allah Ta'ala. Why me? Why did it happen to me? Why did Allah Ta'ala take my husband away? Why did Allah Ta'ala take my son away, etc., etc.? But the grief that is natural. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam experienced grief. Yeah, Nabi Sallam experienced grief. Nabi Sallam experienced grief when his son Ibrahim passed away. He said, Al-aynani tabba' wal-qalbu yahzan, etc., etc. So the grief, the natural grief that is not frowned upon, but objecting to the decree of Allah Ta'ala. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam put the brick or the rock there himself. And then interesting here, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that my family will also be buried here because he was the foster brother of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And the first person of Rasulullah's family to be buried there was Ibrahim. We discussed yesterday that is the son of Maria Qibtiyah. So the Sahabi couldn't pick up this rock, but Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam picked up the rock himself. So from this we learn also that to put a rock which you recognize or you can identify the cover, that's fine. So I told you that our ulama have also given permission to put a board with at least some name, not to go overboard, because then will result in a lot of other innovations. Okay, I see. There's another one hadith. Okay, there's one of them. Okay, let's stop, inshallah. So the online people, our ustad and our person in charge, Mala Ishaq, is currently in hospital. He's going for an angiogram. They say they're not so happy with something in his heart. So please keep him his 2 hours. Also, our senior here at the madrasa is currently in hospital and we're going to be sending him for an angiogram. He just messaged me. So I request you people also to keep him in 2 hours through the barakat of the hadith, the barakat of the Quran. Allah Ta'ala give him shifa and make his test come clear, inshallah. Yes.